What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video of the C5 Corvette. Today we are going to be lowering the Corvette on its factory bolts and just seeing how far we can get down with the factory bolts. Well, I say factory, but I ended up picking up two longer bolts for the rear because I know the factory rear bolts can only go down so low. So I picked up some new bolts at the hardware store. I'll show you guys later what I ended up going with. If you guys saw my last video, I just picked up this 99 C5 Corvette from a buddy of mine for $5 grand. And I'm going to transform this car into a road course car. So I'm going to start by lowering the car on its factory suspension and then eventually go to coilovers. But for now, I just want to see eventually how it'll do just factory out of the box. So these handle pretty well. I'm going to change out the brake fluid with higher temp fluid, change out the coolant for some water, and then take it to its first road course and see how she does. And then eventually we'll put some coilovers and then we'll start doing big brakes and stuff like that, and then see how much it'll cut down our times and get familiar with the car. So for now, we are going to lower the car, and I am still looking for different wheels and tires because these tires are actually dry rotted and I don't like these wheels. So I'm actually thinking about going with like C6 Z06 wheels, but they do kind of poke out in the rear because they're 12 inches wide, but that'll give me a wider stance as well. But I don't know if I like the poke, so I'm still searching for new wheels and tires. If you have any suggestions, please put them down in the comments below. Let's go ahead and start lowering this car. I'm going to start with the rear. I jack up the back. I don't have to take off the tires, nothing. Just need to jack it up, put some jack stands, and then we'll start messing with the bolts on the leaf bar here. And I'll show you guys what I ended up going with for the rear. So these are some grade 8 bolts. These are about an inch longer than the factory ones. I'll show you guys. I'll compare them with the ones we pull out here in a little bit. But I did not go with the zinc coated ones like this nut here. The gold ones, these are a grade 8 bolt, but they're not zinc coated. They were, I think, $2 or $3 cheaper because they're not zinc coated. And the only reason they're not coated like this, it would prevent rust, which this car is not really going to see. We're in Houston. We don't see snow. We don't see salt on the road, so I'm not worried about rust. And like I said, it's just temporarily for now until we put some coilovers. So this will work for now. I think I spent, for the two bolts and the nuts, I spent 15 bucks. So not bad for a factory lower, for a lowering kit. Well, before I lower it, let's go ahead and get some measurements of where it's actually sitting now. So we'll get a measurement of the front. We're sitting at around 27 1/4 on the front, and the rear we are sitting at 28 3/4. All right, so we got our measurements. I guess once we load the car, it's gonna take a while for the suspension to settle, so I will drive it around, let it settle, and then I'll take some measurements in a couple of days, remeasure it, and see how far it dropped. Alright, underneath the car, we can see that we have our bolt here on the leaf spring here on the end. So this is the bolt we need to remove, and the nut. So I'm going to go ahead and spray with some liquid wrench to kind of get it soaked. So maybe it'll help us loosen up some of that surface rust on the bolt there before we hit it with the wrench. Alright guys, now that we let that bolt soak down for a little bit, we'll go ahead and remove it. The top nut actually is a 13/16 or a 21mm wrench, and the bottom bolt is actually 18mm. Go ahead and remove it. Grab our nut, pull our bolt out of here. Alright, here's our bolt. Let me take this over to the bench. Alright, so there's one thing to keep in mind, guys. I did not realize that the actual washer was actually part of the bolt. So if you pick up a new bolt and nut, you might want to pick up a new washer as well, because the washer is actually part of the nut. And same thing goes for when you take off the rubber bushing here. This washer that's on the bolt won't slide past the actual threads. So we need to make our own washers, or if you have some, great. I unfortunately don't have any big enough, but I think I can make some work out of these here. So I'm gonna have to drill these out a little bit more to make them work. So I'm gonna do 4 of these, 1 for each, 2 for each side. All right, test fit. Perfect. All right, so before we put the new bolt in, I'm going to show you how much lower the new one is than the factory bolt. So the factory bolt, actually the thread stopped there, and on the new bolt it goes all the way to the top. So you get about another inch of drop with the new bolt versus the stock one. So if you, with the stock one, the nut would actually stop right there, and with the new one we can stop all the way up here. So it gives another inch of drop. So that's why we're going to go ahead and put the new one in. Alright, we got the new bolt here. We're just going to slide it back through here. Slide it through the top bushing. And go ahead and add our washer to the top. And I'm going to go ahead and add our new nut with the nylon nut. Alright, so right there I can see a little bit of the threads on top, so I'm going to stop there, and we're going to go ahead and just do the other side the same way, and we'll drop the car and see how low that gets us. Alright, so we got the driver's side, and I just got done doing the passenger side the same way. We're going to go ahead and remove our jack stands, and we're going to lower the car and see how low that gets us. Whoa. Holy. Oh my gosh. That is low. Wow, that is like, that's actually perfect. It's like right at the wheel. I have to move it up a little bit more because if it settles anymore, it's gonna tug the tire all the way in. But wow, the suspension hasn't even settled and it's already like right at the tire. Wow, that actually looks really good though. Alright guys, on the front, it's a little different. We are taking off the wheel and we need to locate the leaf spring. And at the end of the leaf spring, you'll see that stud there, or yeah, that's basically a stud sticking out of the leaf spring. I'm already letting it soak with some liquid wrench and some WD-40 because it was a little rusty. So right before I get started, I want to make sure it soaks for a little bit. It's basically going to be a 10mm nut or wrench, if you can get on there, to break it loose. And we're going to return it counterclockwise to remove the bolt up and as low as you want. I'm probably going to go as to match the back, I'm going to have to go pretty high and see, maybe even take it off. I know some people even take bolts off, and I don't know how it rides like that, but people say it rides fine. But like I said, it's not. This is only temporarily. You're gonna need to get a jack, and we need to jack up the leaf spring at the very furthest that you can get on the lower control arm here, because we need to release the tension on that bolt. So here is the leaf spring right here, and here's the lower control arm. So I'm actually going to stick this 4x4 right on top of my jack, and then I'm going to go ahead and place that onto the lower of the leaf spring and jack it up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. There's once it makes contact, okay, I'm going to go ahead and raise it up. Once it starts raising the car basically off the jack that you have, that should be good enough. You have enough. You've released the tension off the leaf spring. So now we go ahead and grab our 10mm on a ratchet or a wrench. I prefer a 6-point, guys. Don't try to use a 12-point wrench on the 6-point end there, or you're gonna strip it out. Go ahead and get a 6-point 10mm, and let's go ahead and see if we can break it loose really quick. Oh. Come on, there it goes. It's moving. All right, but I'm going to use this gear wrench and ratchet here. I'm going to go ahead and stick this on top. And we are basically just going to turn this counterclockwise. see the whole stud there is turning. So basically the higher you go on this, the lower the car is gonna get. Alright, so I got to the point where the stud did not want to come any further out, so that's where I stopped. You can see how much further it's sticking out past the leaf spring there. I already removed the tension off the bottom, so it does look like the wheel is actually, or at least the hub and the rotor are sitting a little bit higher. So now go ahead and do the other side and do the same thing. Just go all the way up till it bottoms out, and then we'll lower the car down, see if it matches the rear. Alright, just got done doing the driver's side as well, the same way. The bolt is all the way up and out. One thing I have been noticing while I've been underneath the car is my sway bar end bushings are shot, man. Look at this. They are toasted on each side, and the tie rod ends are basically gone. They're toasted as well. Front and rear, they're shot. As you can see, they're all split open. So I need to replace that as well. But like I said, I'm just gonna lower the car now, get the ride down and low, and then eventually I'm going to replace the leaf springs with the coilovers and replace all the suspension components. Alright, we are pretty low in the back. I may have to jack the back up because the front, I mean obviously the front hasn't settled yet, but for the back to be that low and hasn't even settled, that's kind of got me worried. I might have to jack it up a little bit, but I need to go drive it, settle the front, and then I'll make my adjustments. So first, let me go drive it around, see if it'll go down a little bit more, and then go from there. Alright guys, so it's been about a week now since I've lowered the car. I let the suspension kind of settle. I drove it around a couple times to kind of help it settle down as well. And in the front, I like the way it sits. It sits pretty good in the front. The back though, that is slant. That's gonna have to go up a little bit. It just feels like it's bouncing around like crazy. So there's no suspension at all in the back. It's just riding on bump stop basically. So I'm gonna try to match the back to the front. I like the front, I like the way that the height is. Obviously that's the lowest I can go. So I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the back and maybe tying the nut down about an inch. And so it'll give me another inch difference in the back to match the front. Just took a measurement with the measuring tape, and I dropped the front an inch and a quarter, which is pretty good. The back though, I just measured and we dropped it 3 inches, 3¼ inches in the back, which is insane. Yeah, it's too much. So go ahead, jack up the back, and let's see if we can raise it up. Ugh. Not my buddy. What in the hell?
I go to the transmission pad. Oh Lord, I made it. Are you recording?
Yeah, I was actually about to record raising up the back of the Corvette. It's too low. What the hell? What's falling off?
This turbo.
The turbo's falling off?
Yeah.
The flange broke or what?
A crack, remember, on the flange?
Oh yeah, it's finally separating. Oh wow. Gas.
Is the heat all the way up?
No.
Turn that sucker all the way up.
Alright, so I guess it took a little bit longer than I expected. My buddy had some issues with this car. He's got a twin turbo LS swapped IS300 that he's working on, and he called me. He just basically came by saying that his turbo was falling off his car because the welds on the flange were broken and the thing was just bouncing around. It was barely about to fall off, so he needed to use my welder really quick and weld it back on there. He also had a transmission leak. That's why through the cardboard underneath the car, the pan was leaking, so we had to just reseal it as well. So that took a little bit longer than expected. If you want to check out his car, Grease Monkey Mods, check it out. Pretty crazy build. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and get to what we were going to do yesterday, is adjust the suspension on this car because it is freaking slammed, and we need to raise it up because this is basically just, there's no no give at all. It's just, it can't even, there's no bounce. It's just sitting on like bump stop. So yeah, I'm probably just going to tighten that nut down about an inch, lower the car back down, and then see where it sits. And then if it looks good, then we'll leave it alone and we'll drive it around and see how she rides. All right, so I adjusted both sides. I just tightened the nut on the top. So at least the threads are just showing on the bolt. So I'm gonna measure this side and do it the same on the passenger side, and then we'll go ahead and lower it down and see how much it raises it up. The car is done and it looks killer. I'm probably gonna mess with the height a little bit in the rear because it is still a little bit low compared to the front, but it rides 10 times better than it did before. It's not slammed. It actually has some suspension travel in the back, but man, it looks good. So this is temporarily for now until I get coilovers. And I probably could have got away with just the factory rear bolt. I didn't have to buy the aftermarket ones because I'm probably right there where the stock bolt height was. So you could probably just lower it just like this with the stock hardware that the car has. Just mess with the length up and down depending where you want. The front is basically as far as it goes. In the back, as you can tell, you can move up and down a little bit more. So like I said, this is good for now. Next is going to be flushing out the fluids, and I'm probably gonna go ahead and change out the sway bar end links because those are definitely in need of replacement regardless. And then I will see about signing up for its first road course. Stay tuned for the next video, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and start qualifying for these events and take it out for its first trip around the track just the way it is, obviously with better tires because these are dry rotted, so I still need to burn these off or maybe leave them as spares. Either way, I'm gonna have fun with these tires and the wheels that it has on an arrow and look for some new ones eventually, but for now, man, this thing looks great. All right, guys, so if you guys find this video helpful, please like, please subscribe. Stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you guys on the next one.